The drop pod hit the surface like a meteor, gouging a trench in the blood-red soil of Threxelon Prime. Steam hissed from the ruptured seals as the hatch popped open. Out stepped a man, no armor, no gun, just a skin suit and a pulse monitor blinking weakly on his wrist. Commander Rafe Maddox squinted against the haze. The air smelled of iron and ozone. He took a breath, thin but breathable. Every part of this place screamed death, but he didn't flinch. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck, and muttered, "Let's get it over with." High above, in the observation deck orbiting the planet, High Arbiter Zurich Ven watched with amused disinterest. Estimated survival, 4 minutes, droned the analysis AI. Generous, Zurich said, his mandibles twitching. Humans never disappoint when it comes to dying dramatically. Below, something growled. A shadow moved at the edge of the forest, tall, hulking, covered in barbed quills that vibrated like tuning forks. The Rilger beast, apex predator of Sector X, emerged. Its 6 eyes locked onto Maddox. He didn't run. The creature charged, a blur of muscle and rage. Maddox shifted sideways at the last second. The beast's claws grazed his thigh, tore flesh. Pain lanced up his leg, hot and sharp. He stumbled but caught himself. No time for screams. Instead, he smiled. "Come on then," he whispered. Maddox scanned the terrain. A jagged ridge to his left. Dense underbrush to the right. He baited the creature, limping deliberately, and ducked into the foliage. The beast followed, roaring. What the Empire didn't expect, what they never truly understood, was the human mind under pressure. Maddox wasn't surviving. He was calculating. He looped through the brush, doubling back, scooping a sharp shard of obsidian from the ground. He crouched behind a thick root, every muscle primed. The Rilger crashed through, and Maddox struck. The shard buried into its throat. The beast shrieked, reared, and swung blindly. Maddox rolled under its bulk, gripped its exposed neck ridge, and twisted. Bones cracked. Quills snapped. The beast collapsed. Silence. In the orbiting command deck, the room froze. "Subject Alpha has neutralized the Rilger," the AI stammered. Zurich leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "How?" Maddox sat beside the carcass, wrapping his bleeding leg with strips of his undersuit. His breath came in ragged bursts, but his eyes were sharp. He'd fought worse. He remembered the Arctic training ops, where frostbite claimed soldiers before enemy fire ever did. Remembered clawing out of a landslide during a Mars terraforming mission gone wrong. The galaxy labeled Earth a Tier 5 hazard world. That was a joke. Earth didn't create survivors. It forged monsters. 3 hours passed. Zurich remained silent as his scientists debated. One called it a fluke. Another suggested drug-enhanced physiology. Yet the feed didn't lie. Maddox had killed a Rilger with nothing but a rock, reflexes, and sheer nerve. "He's adapting," a researcher murmured. Zurich hissed. "He won't survive the next one." He tapped a screen. Another predator was released, a flyer this time, reptilian, razor-winged, a scavenger with a taste for blood. It screeched as it dropped from the sky toward Maddox's position. The human was waiting. He'd skinned part of the Rilger, wrapping its hide around his chest for makeshift armor. In one hand, he held a sharpened rib. In the other, a chunk of muscle, bait. The flyer swooped. He flung the meat. As it veered to catch it, he lunged, slammed the rib through its eye socket midair, rode it to the ground as it shrieked and thrashed, and didn't stop stabbing until it was still. His pulse monitor beeped once, then silenced. "That was 2 apex kills in under 4 hours, a scientist whispered. Zurich stood. "Enough. Shut off the feed. High Arbiter. Shut it off." He turned away, voice quiet. "We may be watching the birth of something ungovernable." Back on Threxelon, Maddox stood over the flyer's corpse, chest heaving. His face was splattered with black-green ichor. He looked up at the hidden sky, where he knew they were watching. "Still think we're prey," he muttered. He didn't want vengeance. He didn't care about their tests. He came to remind them. Humanity didn't just survive the worst the galaxy could throw at them. They adapted. They improved. They hunted back. Maddox awoke to a low rumble, deep and distant, like the belly of the world shifting. He opened his eyes slowly. The sky above him burned a dull violet, veiled behind acidic clouds. Somewhere out there, the Empire still watched. He stretched with a grunt, muscles sore, joints tight. The Rilger hide on his chest creaked as it dried. Around him, bones were scattered, evidence of last night's kill. He wasn't proud of it. He wasn't ashamed either. It was necessary. He stood and looked at his reflection in a pool of stagnant water. Blood, both his and not, caked his arms. His eyes were hard. Focused. There was no fear left, only clarity. In orbit, the observation deck had gone silent. None of the analysts spoke anymore. The data spoke for itself. Zurich entered, hands behind his back, watching the human move across the terrain. Report. Subject Maddox is alive. Wound on his leg appears to be healing. He's begun creating tools from remains of local fauna. No signs of mental degradation. Zurich tilted his head. Tools? He's stripped the flyer's wings. Constructed a glider frame. Possibly a trap. The Arbiter turned away from the screen. He's evolving too fast. Maddox crouched beside a nest of skitter lizards. They weren't threats, but they were fast and edible. He launched a net made of sinew and bone, catching two. Roasting them over a fire of sulfur wood, he ate in silence, eyes never still. Every bite was fuel. Every minute, he learned something new, how the predators tracked scent, how the winds shifted before a storm, how the ground vibrated when something big approached. No human textbook could have taught him this. This was instinct, honed through fire and desperation. He finished eating, wiped his hands on the hide, and climbed a ridge. From the top, the jungle stretched out in endless, gnarled waves. Blackened trees. Shifting shadows. Growls that didn't belong to anything with mercy. Good. 2 hours later, the sky broke open. A storm rolled in, black and chemical. Maddox sheltered under an outcropping of petrified bark. Acid hissed on the stone as rain fell sideways. He watched the droplets chew through leaves and carcasses. Back on Earth, storms like this were called extinction-level events. Here, they were Tuesday. In orbit, Zurich spoke quietly to his top xenobiologist. How long has he gone without sleep? Nearly 32 hours, Arbiter. And still functioning? Efficiently. More so than projected. Monitor his vitals. No interference. I want to see what breaks first, his body or the planet. When the storm passed, Maddox emerged covered in soot. He walked without limping. The wound on his leg had sealed, ugly, red, but clean. He'd used insect resin to cauterize it. It worked. He didn't need perfect. He needed functional. He crossed a ravine using a fallen beast's spine as a bridge. On the far side, a shriek echoed. Maddox crouched, heart steady. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. 3 creatures appeared, hyena-shaped, scales like broken glass, fangs designed to tear plating. They circled. He didn't run. Didn't charge. He waited. The first lunged. Maddox sidestepped, grabbed its jaw mid-snap, and twisted. Bone cracked. The others hesitated. Mistake. He grabbed a jawbone from the ground, slammed it into the second one's snout, and drove it down. It gurgled once. The third bolted. Maddox didn't chase. He turned, picked up a quill from the first corpse, and began etching a crude map into the dirt, marking where predators hunted, where fresh water still ran. Knowledge was survival. Inside the Imperial deck, one of the younger analysts muttered, "He's using apex predator remains like tools." No, the biologist said softly. Like weapons. Zurek's eyes narrowed. Humans don't evolve that fast. They don't have to, came the reply. They adapt faster than any species we've catalogued. By nightfall, Maddox had built a perimeter, stacked bones, barbs, and pits designed to funnel anything into a kill zone. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was baiting. A low rumble answered his invitation. The ground trembled. Trees bent. Something massive moved. He didn't flinch. The creature stepped into view, part reptile, part arthropod, armored in twice the size of the Rilger. A Turnox, rarely seen. The apex of apexes. It didn't see Maddox. Not until the sharpened spike drove into its knee joint. It shrieked, stumbled, and that's when Maddox attacked. Not with strength. With precision. He climbed its leg, jamming quills into nerve joints. It bucked, but he held on, slamming an obsidian blade into its neck vent. Blood sprayed. He fell, but landed rolling. The creature collapsed behind him, shaking the jungle. Maddox stood, chest heaving, covered in gore. He turned toward the sky and raised a fist. On board, no one spoke. Then a ping echoed. A message. The drone Maddox had captured had just sent a signal. The message was short. Send something bigger. Zurek froze. The room did too. No species had ever taunted the Empire. Zurek stared at the screen, whispering more to himself than the room. He's not a man anymore. Then what is he? Someone asked. The Arbiter's gaze didn't waver. A product of a planet that never forgives weakness. Back on Threxelon, Maddox sat on a corpse and sharpened his next weapon. The jungle watched. And for the first time, it hesitated. A week had passed. No human in recorded galactic history had survived Threxelon Prime beyond 48 hours. Rafe Maddox wasn't surviving anymore. He was mastering it. From orbit, the observation deck had changed. No longer filled with smug laughter or speculative chatter. Silence reigned. Analysts watched without comment. Zurek watched without blinking. Maddox, stripped to his waist, stood atop a felled giant, a beast with a skull broader than a cargo pod. The creature's spine had been split with its own fractured tusk. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply worked, flaying strips of sinew, dragging bones toward his makeshift shelter like they were logs for a pyre. He's building something again, the biotech officer murmured. A signal tower? No. A trap. I think he's waiting. Zurek's voice cut in cold and final. Release the Zarkol. A technician looked up, alarmed. That project was locked. Its aggression index is unstable. Even our hunting drones can't. Do it, Zurek repeated. You all wanted to know if the human's a threat. Let's find out. Maddox moved with practiced calm. His body bore scars now, each one earned, each one integrated into his movements. He'd reinforced his armor with chitin plates, his knives with crystallized bone. A net, woven from fiber scraped off thornvine trees, hung above the gorge. Beneath it, bait bled slowly. He looked to the sky. They were still watching. Good. The Zarkol was born in a vat. 9 meters of bioengineered rage, part insect, part serpent, designed to bypass traditional armor, immune to tranquilizers, and trained only in one instinct, kill. Its drop pod streaked across the atmosphere and exploded in a flash of blue fire above the jungle. The shockwave flattened trees. Birds scattered in terrified flocks. Predators fled, sensing what had arrived. Only Maddox didn't move. In orbit, the room held its breath. He won't win, a xenobiologist muttered. He doesn't have to win, another replied. He just has to survive it. Zurek said nothing. But his knuckles whitened against the console. The jungle hushed as the Zarkol entered. It didn't stalk. It cleared its path, slashing through trees, leaving a trail of crushed life behind it. Its mandibles clicked, tongue tasting the air. It found blood. It surged forward. Maddox heard it coming long before it arrived. Not by noise, but by stillness. Even Threxelon's apex predators had fled. He stepped into the clearing, adjusted the wrap around his knuckles, and waited at the gorge's edge. Branches exploded behind him. The Zarkol appeared. It was worse than he'd expected. Taller than a house, with twin sets of arms, each ending in a sickle. Its chitin was layered in jagged ridges, eyes glowing with engineered fury. It shrieked. Maddox didn't blink. The creature charged. The trap triggered. The net fell. But it barely slowed the monster. The Zarkol slammed into Maddox's position and found nothing. He'd moved an instant before, diving sideways, using the terrain. He ducked behind a stone outcrop as the creature's talons raked through it like paper. He lunged out, driving a sharpened thigh bone into one of its lead joints. The Zarkol howled and spun, catching Maddox with a glancing blow. He flew back, slammed into a tree, coughed blood, but rose again. "He's still moving," a technician gasped. Zurek leaned in. His voice trembled, just slightly. "He doesn't stop." Maddox ran, not away, but around. Darting between cover, luring the creature toward a spike pit he'd prepared earlier. The Zarkol leapt the trap. Too smart. It swiped again, caught Maddox's arm. Blood gushed. He rolled, staggering, trying to stay inside its blind spot. But the beast didn't tire. It wasn't meant to. It existed for one purpose. Maddox had no engineered strength, no chemical enhancements, no backup. Just pain, grit, and memory. He thought of his brother, lost during the Mars collapse. Of the soldier left behind on Titan, buried in methane ice. Of Earth's endless trials that forged people like him. The Zarkol roared and lunged. Maddox ran straight toward it. The creature hesitated, half a beat of confusion, and that was enough. Maddox ducked under its slash, vaulted its front leg, and drove a bone spear into the weak seam near its neck. The spear shattered. He didn't care. He grabbed its horn and climbed, hauling himself up its side as it flailed, shrieking in fury. At the top, he reached into a pouch tied at his hip. A chunk of raw acid beetle resin. He jammed it into the creature's eye socket. The reaction was instant. The resin ignited. The Zarkol screeched, clawed at its face, and thrashed wildly. Maddox was thrown clear, landed hard, cracked a rib, but forced himself up just in time to watch the beast collapse, skull melting from the inside out. He stood still, chest heaving, covered in ichor. In orbit, the feed went dead. Static. Then, it blinked back on. The drone camera, reactivated by a crude override signal, focused on Maddox. He stared into the lens, blood dripping from his brow. Then he spoke. "You'll need a bigger god." Zurek turned away, silent. The room of Empire officials behind him had stopped watching with curiosity. They now stared in fear. The dropship descended through black clouds like a dying star. It hovered above the surface of Threxelon, engines roaring against the silence below. No predators stirred. No winds howled. The jungle was still. Inside the retrieval ship, an elite strike team stood armored and tense. They weren't sent to extract Maddox. They were sent to confirm the kill. At least, that was the official order. Unofficially, no one wanted to admit the truth aloud, they were afraid of what they might find. Back in orbit, High Arbiter Zurek Ven stood in the Galactic Council chamber, a place where species once debated power with poise and certainty. Today, they watched the broadcast in silence. The footage from Threxelon had gone viral across the Empire's secure channels. Every dignitary in the room had seen the human tear down the Zarkol with nothing but rage and wit. Every one of them now feared the implications. "Why haven't we eliminated him?" growled Counselor Thurn, voice brittle. Zurek responded without looking away from the screen. "Because he's not alone. He's a sample. And we're beginning to suspect he's not even their best." Murmurs swept the chamber like wildfire. Then what is he? A baseline. The strike team landed, weapons primed. Scanners pinged off the wreckage of the Zarkol carcass, now half consumed by the acidic terrain. One soldier advanced slowly, visor glinting. They found no trace of Maddox near the beast. But they did find a trail, deep footprints, deliberate. Leading somewhere. They followed. Maddox stood atop a hill of broken bones and slag metal. Around him were the remnants of every trap, tool, and weapon he'd made, assembled into a grotesque monument. The carcasses of apex predators ringed him like trophies, not one untouched by human hands. He had cleaned himself. Wrapped his ribcage in stitched hide. A crude cloak fell from his shoulders. In his hand, he held no weapon. He didn't need one anymore. When the soldiers approached, weapons raised, he didn't flinch. "You here to bring me home?" Maddox asked calmly. The squad leader didn't respond. "Or to make sure I don't?" The team hesitated. Their orders were clear, but something about the way he looked at them, like he was evaluating them. "Sir," the lieutenant finally said, lowering his weapon, "we weren't told you'd still be standing." "I wasn't supposed to." He stepped forward, stopping just before the first soldier. "Tell Zurich I'm done playing." Back on the ship, as the feed returned, the Empire watched in stunned silence as Maddox was seen walking up the ramp of the dropship. Dragging something behind him. A massive skull. The Zarkols. Hours later, the transmission went out across the Galactic network. A human. Blood-soaked. Unshaven. Cloaked in the hide of monsters. Standing before a live audience of Empire officials, diplomats, and military elites. Maddox dropped the skull onto the chamber floor. It echoed. Then silence. He looked at them, hundreds of species from dozens of systems. All watching one man. "You think this was a test," Maddox said, voice even. "Some curiosity exercise to measure human capability." He pointed at the skull. "You thought we were interesting. Novel. Useful." His eyes scanned the room. "We warned you. For centuries. You didn't listen. You kept poking. Testing. Sending your probes, your analysts, your traps." He stepped closer. "And now, one of us walks out of your deadliest hell, with your worst nightmares strapped to his back." Gasps filled the chamber. No one spoke. Even Zurich didn't interrupt. "You think I'm unique?" Maddox asked. "No. I'm one of billions." He paused. "And Earth is still our training ground." The weight of the sentence dropped harder than the skull. A whisper moved through the hall. A realization. Later that night, inside a secure Imperial briefing, reclassification proposals were drafted. Species Classification Amendment 112Z, Homo sapiens. Previous status, Tier 5 Biosurvivor, provisional. Updated status, Tier Z Entity, Galactic Threat Potential, undefined. Cautions: do not provoke. Avoid containment experiments. Diplomatic engagements only through high-security channels. Directive: observe. Do not interfere. Zurich watched the screen long after the hall had cleared. "What happens now?" an aide asked quietly. The Arbiter didn't answer at first. He stared at the replay of Maddox dragging that skull. "Now," he whispered. "Now we treat them like we should have from the start." "How's that, sir?" Zurich turned, his face pale and still. "Very, very carefully." Maddox, alone aboard the transport, looked out the window as stars streaked past. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't triumphant. He was tired. But he wasn't done. His message had landed. And now, the galaxy had finally started to understand. Humanity wasn't the experiment. It was the warning.